Welcome back to the Dance Reel podcast. Today's episode sits underneath a lot of what we see in dance, yet is rarely spoken about directly. I want to explore what happens when talent becomes identity, because in dance, talent is often noticed early. There is usually a child in the room who picks things up quickly. They move with ease, they understand corrections faster, they stand out, sometimes without even trying to. And very naturally, the adults around them begin to name that. You're so talented. You're a natural. This one is special. Over time, that recognition shifts. It moves from something the dancer does into something they are. And that is where things begin to quietly change. When talent becomes identity, the stakes of every class, every correction, every performance increases. Not outwardly, but internally. Because for a child, there is no real separation between what they do and who they are. So repeated feedback about ability becomes internalized as identity. I am the talented one. Now, this is not inherently harmful. In fact, it often brings opportunity. The dancer may receive more roles, more attention, more encouragement. They may feel a strong sense of belonging and purpose within the studio. They may develop a work ethic because something in them wants to live up to that identity. And for a long time, this works, which is why it often goes unexamined. But over time, something more subtle begins to form. If I'm the talented one, what happens when I'm not the best today? What happens when I do not get that role? What happens when someone else improves faster than me? What happens when my body is injured or tired or simply not responding the way it used to? This is where identity begins to tighten. You often do not see it immediately, you feel it. It shows up as hesitation. A dancer who used to take risks starts to play safe. A dancer who once explored movement becomes more controlled, more careful, and more contained, because focus is no longer just on dancing, it is on maintaining something. One of the first places this shows up is in the relationship to failure. If talent is who am I, then failure is no longer an event. It becomes a threat. So instead of making mistakes and integrating them, the dancer may begin to avoid situations where they might not succeed. They may hold back in class. They may over-rehearse to eliminate risk. They may become anxious in performance environments because the outcome feels personal. The second place this shows up is how feedback is received. A correction is no longer just information about the work. It starts to feel like information about the self. So instead of hearing, that movement needs more refinement, what lands is, I'm not good enough. You will often see this in very subtle ways. A shift in the eyes, a tightening in the body, a slight withdrawal. Nothing dramatic, yet enough to change how the dancer engages. This becomes particularly visible during injury or a plateau. If your identity is built around being capable, what happens when your body cannot perform in the same way? There can be a real sense of loss, not just ability, but of the self. And I've seen it many times, and I've lived it. Dancers who are highly capable, yet when something interrupts that, they feel unsteady in a way that is difficult to articulate, because it is not just about the dancing, it is about who they believe themselves to be. Comparison also begins to shift. It moves from something that can be informative into something that feels personal. It is no longer just they are improving. It becomes, where does that leave me? This is where hierarchy in studios can become quite loaded. Who is getting roles? Who is being noticed? Who is progressing? All of these start to carry more meaning than they need to. There is also a psychological layer to this. When identity is tied to performance, evaluation can be experienced by the body as a threat. The nervous system becomes more activated. Breathing changes. Muscles tighten. Movement loses fluidity. So even though the dancer is working hard to maintain their standard, the body is no longer in a state that supports expression. This is often where you see contraction in performance. Technically capable, yet something is held, because the dancer is not just dancing. They are protecting something. So the question becomes, how do we work with this in a way that supports both performance and psychological stability? Because removing standards is not the answer. Refining how identity is held. So let's look at what this looks like in real time. This is where the work becomes practical, not as a rule, but as a way of orientating yourself in moments that would otherwise feel personal. After a correction in class, there can be an immediate internal response of, I'm not good at this. Pause and bring it back to the task. That didn't land yet. What specifically needs adjusting? This creates separation between the work and the self. After not getting a role, part, or an award, the mind can quickly move into the meaning of, for example, what does this say about me? Instead, bring attention to what remains within your control. What feedback can I take from this? What is still available for me to develop? This restores a sense of agency. During comparison, the internal dialogue can become positional. For example, they are better than me. Shift the frame. What are they doing that I can observe and learn from? How does this inform my own process? This turns comparison into information rather than identity. During injury, fatigue, or plateau, there is often a sense of loss. Reframe the role you are in. My role is different right now. How do I stay engaged in a way that supports my body? This allows adaptation without collapse. These are small shifts, yet they change how the nervous system organizes in the moment. And over time, they create a more stable internal structure. Expanding identity without losing excellence. For dancers, this begins with awareness of language and internal framing. Are you describing what you did, or are you defining who you are? There is a difference between I didn't perform well today and I'm not good enough. One is specific, the other becomes global. It also helps to develop multiple reference points. Effort, curiosity, adaptability. These are not secondary to performance, they support it. For teachers, the way feedback is delivered shapes how identity forms. There is influence in shifting identity-based praise into process-based observation, not removing recognition, but broadening what is being recognized. There is also responsibility in how attention is distributed. Dancers notice where energy is directed. Over time, this informs how they see themselves within the environment. For parents, the reflection at home matters. If attention is consistently placed on outcomes, roles, or results, identity can narrow. If there is space for children to be seen beyond dance, identity expands. This does not reduce commitment, it stabilizes it. A strong identity is not built by reducing excellence. It is built by widening what that excellence rests on. Talent is a capacity. It is something you have. Identity is something so much broader. It is shaped over time across many experiences, relationships, and environments. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and share with a friend. And for more information on my services, visit katehiston.com. And in the meantime, let's keep it real.